2, and our recording. Back for part 2. Mitchie Purdue, thank you very much for being here. And yeah, what are the did you say it was a 5-part podcasting course or a 5-hour?
It was 5 days, an hour a day.
What are the other tips? Because what you just told me was to shut down the computer.
Let me share my absolute best tip.
Okay.
It would be really neat if your guests knew these tips.
Yeah.
The biggest tip that I walked away with is you really don't want your podcast interrupted because of, competing bandwidth problems. And so, I think a lot of people know that you should turn off every other program other than Zoom or whatever you're podcasting in. But the bigger one is, it's also a really good idea to shut your computer completely down as an off and then turn it back on again. Okay, now why? And the answer is almost every program that you use has a little bit of a ghost of memory in it. And for example, I don't know if you experienced, but what I experienced, supposing you're using Word, you've had the computer on for a while, Word just blasts open the moment you need it. But if you've had your computer off, it's kind of slow. It takes a while to grind into being fully available. Yeah. And the reason it can do it rapidly after you've had the computer on a while is because there's this ghost-like memory using up resources in the background. And that's just wonderful, unless you're on a podcast. If you're on a podcast and you don't want to be at risk of a bandwidth problem, get rid of absolutely everything. So the great big point there is, if you're going to be on a podcast, turn everything off maybe 20 minutes before you turn it, before you're on.
Yeah.
So that you don't have all this ghost resources.
Yeah.
And then something else that it would be just wonderful for all your guests to know. And it's the following, that your currency, whether the guest knows it or not, is the approval, the social approval. So if you're a guest, the most polite thing you can do in the world is go to your hosts, like whoever's doing it, like Apple, I think it's Apple in your case, or wherever, and rate the program. Give it a nice, great, big, fat 5.
Yeah.
Because the more approval that you get, kind of the higher you rate in the search rankings, and just plus it's darn good for your ego. You put all the effort into it. Why not at least have people recognize it?
Yeah.
So to be a good podcast guest thanks their host in the following form. They review and give a 5-star, and then preferably say something really nice about the host.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a podcast etiquette that I think everybody ought to know.
Yeah. I always love it when I have guests on. I can see when they comment afterwards, because nothing looks weirder than when you have an episode up and there's just no comments and it just looks like a graveyard. It's very weird. Yeah. But I have past, including you, who comment, and I'm always so excited.
Yeah. But the person teaching this course was just saying, your host has done an awful lot for you. And just the least you can do is show appreciation. Yeah. And so podcast etiquette, if you're a guest, publicly thank your host by saying something nice, and preferably you don't make it look as if he put you up to it. No, say something from the heart.
Yeah.
Is that cool?
Yeah, it is. It's that's, you'd think I would have taken an etiquette course before I started this podcast, but here I am 216 episodes in, and I just in the last week moved my router right up next to the laptop so the internet connection's better. So if you can't tell, I'm not exactly, I just kind of started this thing and learned as I went. But
okay, then another piece of podcast host etiquette, and our listeners can judge other people by whether they follow this or not. It's really bad form to monologue for too long if you're a guest. It's supposed to be interactive, because presumably the listeners tuned in because they like you, not because they like your guest. I mean, I hope they like your guest, but honest, they tuned in because of you. And so it's really bad form to monologue.
Yeah. Yes. I guess, I don't look at it. I guess I should. I don't look at it from that point of view. I look at it from my point of view. I hear myself monologuing every day. So
No, but you're entitled. Remember, they like you. They're there for you. And there are times when a monologue, I mean, if somebody's got some really, really riveting story, like me, for example.
Yes.
Yeah, then of course monologuing is fun.
Yes. Well, that's exactly the example I was going to use. It's because I don't listen to my own podcast because I just hate listening to myself talk, because I'm saying stuff I already know, my own opinions, my own internal monologue vocalized. But some episodes I do listen to, Rob Manning as well as yours. I've listened to both of those about 3 times since I did them, because it feels more like I'm listening to a guest than listening to myself talk. So Rob Manning or yourself talking about the Atocha, like I listened to that like intently, like I was listening to someone else's podcast. So yeah. So with that, that's what I want to hear about. I want to completely go against what you said. I want to hear you monologue. I want to hear another story.
But on the other hand, tell me if I did this. I hope I did, but I don't remember whether I did or not. Did I ask permission to tell a story that would take a few minutes?
Yeah, I think so.
I hope I did. I
think so. Because I would, yeah, you would say, at one point I said, that's beautiful. And you said, okay, if we're in agreement that that's beautiful, let me tell you another one. And I was like, okay. So I think it was like an informal request and approval. Okay,
because the rule that I said, which is that it's supposed to be interactive rather than the guest monologuing. If the host gives you permission to tell a long story, then everybody's fine.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess that's true. And then in your case, it's just like, I feel like I don't need to give permission. And you're telling a story about a 69 carat jewel, and it's like, no one else on this podcast tells stories about going to Taiwan and getting fist size jewel. So that's, I kind of let that. I don't want to stop that. That's what, So the Atocha or the necklace. So with that, I need to hear another story.
Another story.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's see. Do we want it on trafficking, or do we want it on like success tips, or tell me what you want me to tell stories about?
I think I would like to set aside a whole episode for success tips, but seeing as how today's one's curtailed, can I hear another human trafficking?
All right, go for it. I think a lot of people don't really have any clue what makes a woman stay trafficked. I mean, you think since it's the most awful experience in the world, and since the trajectory of life for somebody who's trafficked is, they're probably not going to live longer than 7 years. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be a drug overdose or disease or murder for organ harvesting. I mean, well, that's true. Are you aware that in China, it's $1 billion a year industry?
Oh, I know organ harvesting is. I guess I know the Uyghurs, the 2 million Uyghurs in concentration camps.
But this is people traveling to China for organ transplants. And
I know that.
It's $1 billion a year. It's just spectacular. I mean, I'm even aware of one guy who told me that he had gone there for an organ transplant, and like, I'm not sure of the numbers, but I'm going to be directionally accurate, even if I wouldn't swear to this in court. But I'm certain that these numbers are directionally accurate. That for the organ transplant that he needed, the first 7 didn't take. The 8th one did take. He's alive and well. But he said there's no possibility that you would have 7 complete matches for his somewhat rare blood type and whatever else you need, unless they got it fresh.
Oh,
in other words, murdering people to get their organs.
That's insane.
Well, I want more people to know about this.
Yes.
And by the way, China's not going to love me for talking about this.
Well, hey, you know what? China's not going to like me either. I have an American flag, so you know what? But hey, we're here.
Oh, and speaking of which, let's share with our audience what happened because of our last one.
Let us. So I tried to run an advertisement. Mitzi, may I monologue for a minute?
Would you please?
I tried to run an advertisement. I'd never run an advertisement for this podcast, and I did a couple episodes ago with the ex-Delta Force guys talking about civil unrest. Great, it worked. I normally get a subscriber every 3 days. I got like 100 in a day. I was like, awesome. Let's choose another one. Mitzi Purdue talking about human trafficking. Boom, let's do it. Rejected within a couple minutes. And I was like, okay, maybe it's, they have all these weird stipulations, but I was like, all right, whatever. I'll try to just run it in America, or I can run it in Brazil, wherever. And I kept trying all these different combinations of running all over the world. 18 to 65, 0 to 18, men, women, conservative, liberal, everything. I tried, and finally I just tried like anywhere, like the easiest, just find a place that will stick. And it kept saying rejected. And it said it's because it's a social issue with with a probability of influencing an election. But I think they cracked down in like the month leading up to the election. I think it's a new thing they're doing.
But we didn't say anything. I mean, I
we didn't.
do my best not to get political, because I want everybody to love me rather than immediately have half the audience hate me.
Yeah. Well, I know. So I avoided that too, that episode. But what made me think, one, that's not political. But two, I just had an episode with a bunch of right-leaning Delta Force guys, and they let that one run, no problem. So I was like, okay, maybe something's messed up, whatever. Maybe I'll switch around the wording of it, And it kept saying, like, rejected, this is a social issue or this is a political issue. And I kept thinking, what is political about raising money for human trafficking? And finally, someone watched it and said, well, Mitzi did talk about going to Taiwan. And China doesn't even recognize Taiwan. If everyone listening remembers in January when the WHO was talking about responses all over the world, the anchor asked about China. This is what China did, blah, 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 blah. What about Taiwan? And the guy walks away. And he comes back and he goes, sorry, I didn't hear you. And he goes, I asked about Taiwan. And the guy goes, anyway, China. And he just glosses over Taiwan like it doesn't exist. Well, you mentioned Taiwan, and simply acknowledging Taiwan is verboten, it's taboo. So to really, I told you about that. And I was like, well, let me just confirm my bias. So I tried to run a couple more, Mike Durant. I tried to run Mel Evanesian, who's a female weightlifter. Tried to run a couple. They all went through. I was like, cool. Brigadier General Robert Spalding, author of Stealth War, about China's war against the United States. Tried to run that one within a couple minutes. Boom, rejected. Political, trying to influence elections.
Wow.
I can only imagine that it seems like the CCP has got their dirty little fingers in Facebook. I don't know. What do you think?
And boy, now it's going to get political.
Now, yeah, well, we can steer clear. I'll let you guide the conversation. I don't.
Well, we've mentioned Taiwan already.
Well, we're already there.
So already blocked.
Yeah, well, we're already shadow banned in China, so I just accept that as a fact.
Okay, maybe I won't go into. I'm going to say this jokingly, but it's a joke that I'm fond of. You, Tommy Carrigan, are speaking to, drum roll, a certified professional conspiracy theoretician.
I didn't know that. I love you even more.
Okay, well, now let me tell you how I got that title.
Okay.
I gave myself the certification. I gave myself a little test and certified myself. And then for professional, I paid myself $1. So now I'm a certified professional conspiracy theoretician.
All right. Well, hey, you're legal now.
But, many a truth is said in jest. I'm totally ready to believe at least some conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm.
Human nature almost dictates that people who can get together and quietly do things that they shouldn't probably will.
Yeah. It's
in fact, let's steer back to trafficking again.
Okay.
Because I want you to wish me luck on something.
Okay.
I want to give a TED talk on human trafficking.
Oh yeah?
But I don't have the ability to do it yet. So I'm giving myself half a year to study. I've hired a TED talk coach, and I'm about to hire a voice coach. And between the two of those and half a year of effort, I want to give a really bang up TED talk. But you audition for it, so there's no guarantee that you'll get it. But I want to share with the world that there's a lot we can do about human trafficking that's not widely known yet.
Okay.
And I call it the evil equation. And here's the evil equation. And I invented this this morning. The evil equation is that if you have enormous profits and no accountability or no penalty, that's going to explain the absolute exponential growth of human trafficking. And it's a $150 billion a year industry. My God, it's this, no, let's see, organ harvesting is $1 billion a year. This is $150 billion a year. The United Nations says there are more than 40 million people who are human slaves today. And it comes about because of the evil equation. And the evil equation, again, is high profits, no deterrence equals explosive growth. And so what do you do about it? If all the motivations are there, just insane profits. I mean, $150 billion?
Yeah,
I'm going to guess that may be somewhere around half of what we spend for education in the United States.
I would say it's probably more.
Okay, I don't know. This is me as an impression painter, not me being a statistician.
Okay.
But the amounts are just crazy. So how can you interrupt the evil equation of a huge motivation? The cost benefits are just, the benefits are enormous, and your chances of doing jail time are 1 in 100.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you can make, a guy from the NYPD, New York Police Department, told me that, and I mentioned this last time, that if you have if you have 4 girls and you're a trafficker, you can make $1 million a year tax-free. And it's actually better than drugs, because you can sell the girl over and over again. And you don't have to cultivate her, you don't have to weed her, you don't have to process her. No, she just comes in and delivers you money every night, or you threaten her. Well, so the profits are enormous, but your chances as a trafficker of doing jail time are 1 in 100 or less. And this is globally. Well, there are 2 answers to this. One is to attack the profit side. And I just heard of something that Microsoft did. And here's the deal, and it's, to my mind, a prototype of what we could do to really make an impact on throwing sand in the gears of trafficking. And it's the following. I'm going to tell you something quick about Microsoft, and then I'll tell you how it applies to trafficking. Several years ago, 10, 20, whatever, Microsoft was having a simply horrendous problem with counterfeiters. That is, people who would take their intellectual property and use it and not pay anything for it. And they were just siphoning off tremendous amounts of money. Well, they hired a guy, his name's Gary Miller, whose specialty is international fraud. And they said, would you please, catch these guys? But he said, that's ineffective. I mean, this is him talking to Microsoft. That's ineffective because you're up against a whack-a-mole situation. Mm-hmm. You stop this counterfeiter, somebody else springs up, and then somebody else. I mean, you're playing whack-a-mole. He said, what you really want to do is take away the economic incentive. And he said, what I propose that you do, Microsoft, and he actually did do this, is we trace the money to the banks, and we tell the banks, this money really belongs to Microsoft. So the counterfeiter has been spending vast amounts of energy and effort making money, but once it's in the bank, whoop, it's illegal money.
Yeah.
And Gary Miller's approach is, I think if I can remember it right, it's freeze, seize, and there's some third part that I can't remember. But what he would do is, whenever somebody was making money off of counterfeiting, he'd find their banks. He'd show the bank the records showing that basically this is illegal money, mm-hmm. and he'd give the bank a choice. The choice is, we would like you to return this money to Microsoft, and we can absolutely prove it. And I don't know the legality of it, but Gary is a lawyer, so I presume that everything was in the up and up.
Yeah.
Anyway, he'd go to the bank and he'd say, here's the evidence we have against you that this money really belongs to Microsoft, and you have a choice. We will name and shame you, or help Microsoft in this problem.
Yeah.
Well, Microsoft has said that this was the most effective anti-counterfeiting program that they had ever had.
Okay.
Because what you do is, you know, why are the counterfeiters doing it? They're doing it to make money. You make it so that they're not making money, and their motivation is gone. And so what if we could do the same thing with trafficking?
Okay.
When you have $150 billion, 150 billion, well, that's going through banks. You know, nobody's carrying around $150 billion on his back. No, they have to use banks. And there's some, this is somewhat recent, but our ability to track things in the dark web and to find people, it's military grade skills that are available in the hands of these international fraud detector people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what if we could do the same thing for trafficking? Just interfere with the profit motive by, you know, you've made your $1 million in New York, and you can't spend $1 million easily unless you're in some way banked.
Yeah.
What if we have ways of absolutely tracking?
Yeah.
And the sophistication for doing this is just beyond imagination. But I bet all your Navy SEALs guys and all your special ops guys know that there's stuff out there where you really can do this and snatch from the bank their money.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's awesome. Is it? And you think that's a viable way to go against human trafficking?
It's a part. I mean, there's so many parts to this extraordinarily complex problem. But I want to give a TED talk in which I talk about the evil equation.
Okay.
And again, you know, I was working on it this morning. I mean, that phrase came to me this morning, the evil equation. And to repeat, the evil equation is high profits, no deterrence equals human trafficking.
Yeah,
But there's two. I mean, as I say, there are many parts to this, but there are two that I'd like to go after that I think if we went after them on a bigger scale than is happening right now, as in I don't think it's happening much at all now. Mm-hmm. But what if we could get? I want to give. Oh, forgive me for being presumptuous, but why not think big? I mean, Frank Perdue used to say, "Go big or go home."
Yeah.
So here's my big thinking. What if, with half a year of coaching and half a year of voice training and research and reaching out to every expert that I can to get the most current, fabulous information, maybe some great stories that would go with it. What if I could give a talk that, now this is the think big or go home, or go big or go home. What if it could be viral? What if people would sort of rise up and demand
mm-hmm.
that we do more of this?
Mm-hmm.
It could make a dent.
It absolutely could.
And there's more to it, and you're hearing me just at the beginning of this journey.
Sure.
But the second part to what I want to do is, the first part is interfere with the profits, and that's this business of seize and freeze, or maybe it's freeze and seize. But in any case, get the banks to return the profits. Because by the way, banks, it's my understanding that banks, how about it's not my understanding, it's my certainty, they really care about their reputation.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody has the capability of making them have a reputational hit, they're going to avoid that.
Yeah.
So this is a powerful tool, and it's going to need a lot of refining. And as I said, I'm giving myself half a year to try to get this polished and in the best shape it can be. But the second part of the talk would be, we've got the interfering with the profit part, but what about the penalty part?
Mm-hmm.
And the penalty part, and now we're circling back to Taiwan. As far as I can tell, Taiwan seems to be doing the best in the world at the penalty part for it. Because in Taiwan, you can't threaten the girl that you're going to disfigure her or kill her baby brother or whatever if she testifies, because she and her baby brother and anybody who's at risk is in the equivalent of a safe house.
Okay.
And that means that Taiwan, and again, this is as far as I can tell, I'm ready to be fact-checked on this, but it seems as if Taiwan may have the best arrest and conviction and incarceration rate for traffickers in the world.
Really?
Yeah, because they, from the head of the country, down to how about the taxpayer, they're all willing to support spending the money to make it possible for the witnesses to testify. And that's the missing link. In most of the rest of the world, witnesses are just terrified to testify. But Taiwan has figured out a way around this. And again, if I could have this TED Talk, like spread, I would love to influence people just to demand that you attack the two sides of the evil equation.
I think either before or after, we need to find a way to get you, we said it last time, to get you on Joe Rogan. I don't think he's ever done a human trafficking episode.
Well, do you know, by the time my voice coach, whom I don't have yet, I'm looking for one, and by the time my TED Talk coach and everybody else who tells me what to do, by the time I'm fed into this meat grinder of perfecting medicine, I ought to be one heck of a lot better than I am right now.
Nonsense. I think you're great now. But polish it, fine tune it. I think it will work. Back to what you said, if it's $150 billion industry, you're going to be going up against, like we talked about last time, but they might not do outright, try to, he said, that guy said, what if they kill you? You said, I'm 78 years old. I believe in this cause. I don't care. Do you think that they're
now I'm a year older and I care even less. So
exactly. But
it occurred to me in a moment of caffeine fueled enthusiasm that would I give my life I'd give my life for my country. Would I give my life for 40 million people who are in effect being tortured?
Yeah.
Oh, I would.
Yeah.
That would make a meaningful life for me.
Yeah. If you can.
I mean, believe me, I don't want to, but if that were the choice, I wouldn't shrink from it.
Yeah. It's no, the goal isn't to have to die. It's the willingness.
No, I always love in a war, you don't want to die, you want the other guy too. I want the traffickers to be in deep trouble.
Yeah. General Patton, who's his R-rated. You don't want to be the poor to die for his country. You want to make the other guy die for his country.
Okay, I want the traffickers in trouble, not me. But
do you think there's a way? Is there a way to get the full force? Like, why isn't this being taken on by, or if it is it being taken on secretly, like the United States or the UK, like big first world countries with massive intelligence networks? Why don't you think it's happening with them?
Okay, I can speak to that because I follow that. Let's start with the United Nations. They have a goal that by 2030 that we have eliminated human trafficking. So it's a world goal. But I've talked with people at the UN who are working on this, and they say, so far, even though it's a world goal, we're not anywhere near on track.
Yeah.
My impression is it's a funding issue. If you're going to, if I could help raise funds for, it's a funding. Okay, now this is my subjective impression from people I've talked with, but I've talked with quite a few. And I do believe it's a funding issue. And then it's an awareness issue. And if we could do something to raise awareness, that would help the United Nations goal. As for different countries, the United States actually, our State Department is working very hard on this. It's just that the problem seems to be so intractable. I've seen the State Department reports on human trafficking, and I believe the United States government is committed to doing something about this. But I don't see it going down. In fact, I just did a story for my blog. Well, actually, I did it also for the Association of Foreign Press Correspondents, that you would think that COVID-19 would be slowing trafficking. Not so. It's how about it's growing by leaps and bounds during this period. And here's why. Trafficking flourishes when people are vulnerable. and the vulnerability that I've seen estimates that 1 billion people are economically more vulnerable than they've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when you have extreme economic vulnerability, or vulnerability of any sort, but let's take economic for the moment. That's the awful situation where maybe a family, I hope I'm not talking the United States. The cases where I know of this are in other countries, but perfectly well happen here.
Probably here too, yeah.
Parents have 5 kids. They can't feed them. They sell one to a trafficker. And that does happen. I mean, if you're economically vulnerable enough and you cannot feed your family, desperate situations calls for desperate responses. And 1 billion people in the world are now more economically vulnerable than, how about catastrophically economically vulnerable? That encourages trafficking.
Yeah, if 1 billion people are vulnerable, even if only 1 in a million are so desperate to sell a child, that's still 1,000 children.
Except that I bet it's 1 in 1,000, not 1 in a million.
Yeah, well then it's 1 million children. Yeah, that's
okay. And then another side effect of the lockdowns is, in a lot of cases, children are somewhat shielded from trafficking because they're in contact with a support system like a school or the school nurses or people. I mean, they're not going to catch all of them, but they can slow it down if there are a whole lot of eyes on the children who are trying to protect them, and that's gone now.
Yeah.
Or for schools that are locked down, that social support system is gone.
Yeah.
I mean, again, the point I was trying to make was, I had hoped that COVID-19, with social distancing and fear of disease, would just squelch trafficking. Not at all. Worse than ever.
Yeah, and it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's, if you just wanted to take like the fail-proof approach, it would be, like putting like an RFID tracker like in a dog, so you know where it is, or your phone. But then it's, well, that enters the whole of like, what are we? So are you going to chip the human population? Isn't this George Orwell? Like, it's, what's the middle ground?
In a sense, there are no easy answers. However, I do think that the approach of using the highest of high tech to trace money to banks, and the name and shame approach of making sure that the trafficker isn't making money out of it. The traffickers are in it for money. Yeah. And if you can interfere with the money part of it, you're ahead of the game. And by the way, the solutions that I'm suggesting, I know perfectly well that they're not perfect. I mean,
sure.
But anything that would slow it down, anything that would cause friction in the system, anything that would cause people to think twice before doing it, if you can slow it down, you're saving millions of people.
Yeah. It's, the human ego. We often want the kill shot. How am I going to end it by midnight tonight? And it's like, well,
I want that silver bullet.
Yeah, right. Well, chances are we're not going to end human trafficking by midnight. But it's kind of a weird correlation. But General James Abramson, the deputy, or the head of SDI under Reagan, Star Wars, the lasers in space that would shoot down his whole thing was, I watched an interview with him last night from the 80s, and he said, it doesn't happen in these grandiose leaps and bounds where all of a sudden we have the ability to shoot down Soviet missiles. He said it happens, the way he describes it, he goes, they're tiny little bricks. Maybe it's a radioactive proof microchip. Maybe it's a new chemical laser. Maybe it's a new radar. But he says the bricks come in, and as more bricks come in, they start to accelerate the process of bricks coming in. He goes, there's no big, fantastic, we did it. He goes, one day it just you start to realize we're there. And I think that's what this approach is it's the unsexy, like, it's not a silver bullet, right? But it's going to be throw sand in the gears, slow it down. It might take a decade to slow down.
But I believe that the UN recognizes 2,000 organizations that are working on this.
Yeah.
And I think it would be, I've heard a guess that there are 40,000, but maybe there's 100,000 organizations working on it. I mean, who knows? But I think with so many people working on it, and the more we can cooperate and the more we can raise awareness, in the end, I'm optimistic, but I'm not seeing silver bullets, except I think that awareness gets us farther along the road.
Mm-hmm.
Because when people are more aware of it, then they're going to demand more action. And you know, here's something that I would love, and I think I mentioned it last time, but police departments, a typical police department, I mean, not in a mega city like New York, but a typical police department, I mean, they're really stretched so thin, responding to what they've always been responding to.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of a new thing. And it takes a lot of money and a lot of skill and expertise to go through the dark web and find the traffickers, because the traffickers are just excellent at things like burner phones, or if dates are being made, they're not using their own phone. No, the girl is using her phone. So you can find the girl, but you don't find the trafficker.
Yeah.
Or the trafficker can be just extremely good at moving. And by the way, I refer to girls, but understand that this could certainly include men as well.
Absolutely.
But just to make it simpler, the speaking part of it, and because it's the majority are certainly girls, the trafficker will move his girl, it will depend how often, but like every week, so that by the time a police department is sort of aware of a problem, you know, somebody said, hey, look, this is very suspicious, he's moved to another state.
Yeah.
And to leap beyond the ability of the traffickers to hide takes money, and it takes technological expertise. So I wish that the public would demand that more resources would go to police departments specifically aimed at anti-trafficking. And boy, that's going to be a hard sell in a time of asking for police defunding, but nevertheless, it's law enforcement is the way to provide at least some deterrence to the traffickers. Because right now, as I said, less than 1 in 100 chances of paying any penalty for doing this. But if police departments had more money and therefore could deploy more resources to catching the bad guys, then you'd have a better chance of having somebody think, you know, maybe this isn't the right career for me. I might spend 15 years in jail.
Yeah. Is the move, do you put massive monetary rewards on whistleblowing and or, you know, tips that lead to a successful arrest, or even if you really want to go in, you know, go to the old West, just go bounty hunter, you know, put money in it, fight the evil equation with money. Be like, hey, you're part of this thing. If you blow a whistle, you can, you know, maybe get a reduced court sentence. You get $1 million, throw all the other guys in jail. I think that's the only way to fight money with money, you know, or bounties. Here's a human trafficker. Someone bring us the body, dead or alive. Here's $10 million. You know, it worked back in the Wild West. Maybe that's what we got to do. I don't want to be
because suffering involved in the people who are trafficked. I think it's almost beyond imagination.
Yeah.
I remember telling you about what Dr. Robert Cancro, the retired head of New York University Medical Center Psychiatry Department, said.
Yeah, the permanent depression.
But I'll remind you, because it's still relevant, the worst depression you've ever had is something that probably has a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah.
But if you're being trafficked, as long as you're being trafficked, it's that much depression unending until you die.
Yeah.
And the world's got to stand up and do something about this. There are people suffering on a scale that's just hard to imagine. And
it's also what you said that I thought that really stuck with me was the lifespan is 7 years. That's insane.
7 years of complete misery.
Oh yeah. It's not like an easy way out. Yeah, it's through suicide or murder or overdose. It's 7 years. Like that's less than a dog.
Yeah, other thing is consider what it does to the families of the people who.
Oh yeah.
I mean, imagine that you're a mother. You'll never have a happy night again.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. The unmeasurable effects it has on society. We can't look at something like COVID. We can say someone gets sick, they go home, they give it to someone else. We can track that arguably like somewhat well. But this is something where it's like, how do you measure that? Like, what, are you measuring everyone in the world's dopamine levels and stress levels and PTSD and sleepless nights? And how many of them just start drinking every night? Because how else do you sleep knowing that your child was kidnapped, right? You're probably
Well,
just
I know
hitting the bottle.
I'm close friends of like, I don't know, 20 years with a woman whose daughter was in that situation. And I would say that my friend never had a peaceful hour in her life.
I would believe that. Yeah.
What's happening to my daughter?
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, you're right. Because you don't even have closure. You don't know, like, okay, they suffered, but they died. They might still be suffering, right? You don't know.
You don't know whether they died or not.
That's what I mean. Is so, if they
By
died.
the way, in the case of my girlfriend, it did have a happy ending.
Okay.
I think it went on for a couple of years, but eventually rescue and rehabilitation. But good Lord, the suffering.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't be inside my girlfriend's head, but as a normal, empathetic person, I could sense that it's about as bad as you can get.
Yeah, it's hell on earth.
To suffer for your child. Oh.
Yeah, it's hell on earth.
It's hell on earth.
Yeah, I gotta wrap this one up in 2 minutes, as I said before. You keep looking at the clock.
Well, I want to send people to my website.
I was about to say winthisfight.org, because I was gonna say plug it before we wrap it up.
Well, please come winthisfight.org, because the program is evolving, but I would love to have you be a part of it. And I'll make a promise to you. I'll make a promise to anybody listening, which is I will never ask for 1 minute of your time more than you want to give.
Okay.
But people who get involved in this usually find it so satisfying and so fulfilling, and so knowing that they are decreasing misery in the world. They don't mind. Work. Oh, the other thing is, I promise to anybody who chooses to volunteer, I'll do everything I can to find work that's satisfying for you. I mean, we'll explore together what your abilities and talents and creativity is, and that's what you're going to do.
Yeah, and
I want it to be as satisfying for you.
Yes.
As possible.
Yeah, you don't want it to be teeth pulling, right? Make it a wonderful experience. I'll do whatever I can, and I hope I've made it clear that my podcast is your podcast. This is your platform. As it gets bigger, this is your free platform. This is you can consider this.
You know what? I want to practice my TED Talk on you.
I was going to ask. I wasn't sure if I should ask or not. Is that spoiler? Please do. You can come on and do a practice TED Talk. We don't even have to upload it, or we can upload it. I'd love to upload it.
No, do you know what? I'm dying to share it with our audience, because I would like feedback from them. Mitzi, that story fell flat. Or Mitzi, you really sounded awfully full of yourself right there.
Let's do it.
Hard against that.
Let's do it.
You can't reveal the truth on that one.
Yeah, let's do it. It's because, hey, it's YouTube. No one's pulling any punches. If you can hide behind a fake username, trust me, go look at some of the comments on my videos. No one holds any punches. You get as real feedback as it's the most raw feedback you can get, for better or worse.
But how about that's what I need, because
Yes.
if I'm to do a good job, I need to know what I'm doing wrong.
Yes.
I can't correct it unless I know about it.
Exactly. And might as well hear it now as opposed to after a TED Talk, correct?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm aiming for the world.
Yes.
That's so presumptuous of me, but
no, you got to
go.
But
I think the cause is worth being presumptuous.
It is. If we all have our flaws. It's like you said, think big. Like I don't take this podcast like, oh, this is going to be fun. I'm going to do a couple episodes. I set out from the beginning. I set out in December 2019. I was like, I think it will take me by 2030, but I'm going to be bigger than Joe Rogan. And people kind of roll their eyes. And I'm like, you got to have a little bit of healthy ego. You got to like, but why am I doing this? If I'm just doing this to just do a little podcast, that's fine. If that's what someone wants to do, that's not what I want to do. I'm going for the gold medal, or I don't want any part of it. So I think there's nothing wrong with going, I want the whole world to know about this. Yeah. You got
and
it.
in your case, I absolutely believe in you. I know
Thank
that
you.
you're going to get it, and it's going to be sooner than 2030.
I hope so, but it's thank you, making me blush now. But
and I don't want to make you late for your fabulous upcoming podcast.
Don't tell anyone. Don't tell
I
anyone.
will too. It's somebody fabulous.
It's I don't know how I'm going to top it. I'm actually kind of nervous. I might have to just end the podcast after that because I might top that. But don't spoil it, Mitzi. It'll be up soon enough. Everyone listening.
All right.
Thank you very much, Mitzi Purdue. Thank you very much. WinThisFight.org. It'll be in the top comment and in the description. Do your part to help end human trafficking and stop these demons from bringing their hell to earth. Mitzi Purdue, thank you so much. And until next time, stay safe. God bless. Thank you, Mitzi.